Hello, my friends. This is Lynda Lippin, and welcome to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Well, hello, my friends. Welcome back one more time to the Pilates Goddess podcast. This is your host, Lynda Lippin. Now, I know that a few weeks ago when I got a little spotty with my uploading on the podcast, I did promise you some extra podcasts, and I'm going to be really honest with you right now. My life has been a little insane. I had my birthday and our anniversary. I had a bunch of personal things going on, including some medical stuff with my dog. It's just been a lot. And while I love you, I also need to respect a little bit of my own energy and my own time, just so that I can continue for the long haul serving my clients, serving all of you who listen to the podcast, who are in my groups, who engage with me, who email me, who DM me. I need to continue doing that. And sometimes that means I need to take a little time. So I'm just apologizing for promising that I was going to deliver extra during a time when I barely had time to deliver the minimum. Okay. So I'm not saying that at some point, as things get a little calmer, that you won't get some extra episodes. But right now, I'm just going to try to stick to my Tuesday, Thursday schedule that I've had for well over a year and continue getting you some quality info. I will also be starting to do more interviews. So if you are a listener and you have something like interesting you'd like to talk about on this podcast, whether it's Pilates related, business related, health related, whatever it looks like, reach out. Once again, you could just go to pilatesgoddess.com and you'll be on my pod page and you can leave me a voicemail there. You can send me an email from there. And we can chat a little more about what you might like to do and discuss with me on the Pilates Goddess podcast. So today I'm kind of opening a little bit of a can of worms, but I hope not too badly. And I want to talk about what Pilates equipment is and what Pilates equipment isn't, because there's a lot of confusion out in the marketplace right now. And I'm seeing this confusion a lot in newer Pilates teachers. I just had somebody in a group make a post that said, wait a minute, I'm not STOT certified, but I just taught clients on a STOT reformer. The box is longer. The box goes over the edge of the carriage when it's in the long position. And it was very difficult for me to sit my clients on it correctly for things like teaser without the box going to tip forward and off of the reformer. And I just said, yeah, the equipment's different. And all of the manufacturers pretty much make slightly different equipment. So you need to play with it and see what it looks like. And her response was, you would think that in making equipment for all of these years, they would have dealt with that issue. And I was like, one might think that, but here we are. So, probably in their own teacher training program, they teach you how to work around that situation with the box. But the rest of us haven't learned that secret. And this is part of what I want to discuss in the differences in Pilates equipment. All right. So let's just start with what the classical kind of full studio would look like, because we can then veer off into contemporary and other territory. So number one is the universal reformer. Okay. The universal reformer in a classical studio has 4 springs that are the same weight. They're all heavy springs, usually a wood or aluminum frame. The straps are leather or sometimes vegan leather, because that's a thing now. And they have wooden and metal handles that attach to them. Okay. There are 2 straps that come with the reformer that lengthen the length of the foot strap for things like long spine, leg circles, and frog. And of course, it comes with a box that is a relatively small box that really fits on the apparatus. And there is the ability to go 3 gears back from the first gear, which is the tightest spring. Usually comes with a little block that kind of, that just sits in the rail to block the carriage coming back, so that if you move it into second or third gear, it doesn't slam in and the springs don't come off. And the other thing you'll notice is there are no risers. There are no risers in the back of the reformer where you can adjust the height of the strap. So it's a relatively simple machine. There are also no ball bearings in the wheels, because when Joe Pilates was building his equipment originally, it was between the wars, during wars, between wars, and there were no ball bearings available for things like exercise equipment. So the machines don't have them. And this drastically changes how the workout happens, how the exercises feel, and what the machine does. Okay. The other piece of it is the foot bar. The foot bar is easily adjustable. It lifts up easily. You can actually move it with your feet while you are lying down. It does not lock in. And then the headrest is also adjustable, usually into 2 different positions, and can lay flat. And that's it. That's what you're looking at. So you got the reformer. Sometimes you'll have a combo unit where you'll have a reformer with a tower situation on the end of it. And we'll talk about the tower in a second. Let's talk about the Cadillac. So the Cadillac looks like a big 4-poster bed. It's got springs and attachments, usually a push-through bar on one side, and then on the other side, you'll see a rollback straight bar, usually leg springs and some arm springs. There is always a trapeze that can hang off of the rails at the top that slides along those top rails to various positions on the Cadillac. And there's usually some fuzzy ankle straps there because there's stuff we do with those. Once again, it's a relatively simple piece of equipment. Arm springs, rollback springs, leg springs, push through, and tower. That's it. The tower that you might see in a studio attached to a wall by a mat, or sometimes attached to the back of a reformer with a mat insert, is everything from the Cadillac, other than the trapeze, of course, and the ability to do pull-ups and stuff. But all of the springs, the push-through bar, the rollback bar are there. Then you've got the chairs. And there is the Wonder chair, which usually has no handles, has 1 pedal, has 2 springs, same weight. You'll have a high chair or the electric chair. That chair has a back to it. It's a little more structured. It's got a seat to it that actually has wooden guides on it that show you where to put your feet for some of the exercises. It also has pull-up handles attached to the side. It has a back with a pole on it so that you can assist yourself, use it to assist in some of the exercises. And that's the electric chair. Then you have the baby armchair or the armchair, which have some of the lightest springs in the studio. And you can sit, stand, or kneel on this chair, and you are working with a piece of equipment where the springs are light, but the chair back moves, so it adds a little bit of an element of instability. It is a difficult piece of equipment to work with, but is also, say, if you're in a classical studio and you want to do some of the things that you might do with a light yellow spring on a more contemporary reformer, you can do that with the armchair. So you don't have to do it on the reformer. This is why in classical, we don't always need so many levels of spring tension, because we have other pieces of equipment where you can go do that stuff with lighter springs. You'll also see a pedipole, which looks like a very tall T frame with 2 light springs hanging on either side. with handles and a platform that you stand on. Lots of stuff we do on that. One of my favorite pieces of equipment. Then you're going to see barrels, usually a high or ladder barrel that is literally kind of a taller hump that has a that has a ladder attached to it. Then you'll see a spine corrector, which has that same hump, but with a triangle wedge kind of seat attached to it. And then you have the small barrel, which is just the hump. And they usually have handles on either side. All right. When we move then into smaller pieces of equipment, you have foot correctors, you have toe correctors, you have breathalyzers, you have the magic circle. You might see some smaller weights. You might see some weighted bars and straight bars and some longer poles that we call gondola poles that we use for an exercise called the gondola on the reformer, as well as just for helping our clients with standing balance for some of the other exercises. So you'll notice there were some things that were not on my list, all right, even though I've talked about them and they could be ways of mimicking equipment at home. But what's not actual Pilates equipment, there is no Pilates ball, okay? No Pilates ball. Not that I don't use balls, not that I haven't done ball exercises, but it's not a piece of Pilates equipment. Foam roller. Do I use a foam roller? Yes, I do. Do I do sometimes Pilates work on the foam roller? Indeed. But it's not a piece of Pilates equipment. It's simply something that you could do some Pilates exercises on. Okay. You'll also see in a studio raised mats that sit a few inches up off the floor that usually have dowels on either side of the top end of them, a foot strap attached to the bottom end of it, and two little boxes that we call moon or satellite boxes that sit alongside. There's no ball. There's no bands. Okay. Pilates bands, not a thing. No tubing. So all of those like Pilates reformer at home things that you see online right now that are simply sets of tubing with straps and handles and a door anchor, that's not Pilates equipment. Okay. It's bands and and tubing with handles and foot straps. And frankly, you can buy those for $20 on Amazon. There is no reason to pay $200 for them being marketed to you as a replacement for the Pilates reformer. All of the weird things that you see online, the bands, the bars that have TheraBands attached to them, like all of that stuff, that's not Pilates equipment. I mean, you can basically attach the name Pilates to just about anything and people will buy it and think it's Pilates equipment, but it's not. Can it be used in a Pilates studio? Yes. Does it make it Pilates equipment? No. Bozu, not Pilates equipment. TRX, not Pilates equipment. Once again, have I taught Pilates classes using a TRX? Yes, I have. But again, that doesn't make the TRX Pilates equipment. It just means that I'm smart and can vary the exercises and do them in a way that uses that suspension system well. Okay. But again, not Pilates equipment. So the other day I got done teaching a mat class and I was showing the women in my class who were new to a classical studio around, and I was showing them the equipment. And one of them looked up at me very quizzically and said, so the reformers they have at the big chain studio aren't classical equipment? And I'm like, no, they're not. They've got the risers. They've got, different strength springs. They're bigger. The bar doesn't adjust as easily. They've got risers, all of these things going on, ropes instead of straps. And she said, but they say that they're classical Pilates equipment. And I just looked at her and said, look, people can say whatever the fuck they want, but it's not classical Pilates equipment. End of discussion. Now, pretty much all of the manufacturers, or many of them, are starting to make some version of the classical Pilates equipment, including Balance Body, which actually has two separate lines, one called the Center Line, and then they have another Legacy line. One was done in concert with Amy and Rachel Alpert from the Pilates Center of Boulder. And the other one was done with Jay Grimes, who is a classical teacher out in California. We're also seeing some nice classical equipment coming out of Italy. Forma Pilates is doing some great stuff here. Techno Pilates in Italy is actually doing a classical folding reformer, which I'm kind of excited about because that is potentially something that could fit into my apartment. Yes, yes. But all of the other things that you see OOVs, OOV, you see gyrotonic equipment, you see Pilates-esque equipment with all these bells and whistles and different adjustable things and stuff. None of that is classical Pilates equipment. So just know that all of the different brands of equipment feel very different in the workout. So if you have only been working, say, in one of the chain studios and you feel like you're not getting a great workout, some things just feel way too heavy, some things feel way too light, you're not sure about how to deal with those springs and protect your joints at the same time, then it could behoove you to do a little research, find out what equipment and what sort of lean the studios in your area have, and then take some classes at those studios just to feel the different equipment. If you are getting ready to do your Pilates certification, then I highly recommend getting your ass out there and going to different studios and seeing what that equipment is like and what the studio vibe is like. For example, if you decide that even though you've always done Pilates in a classical studio, that you want to do the Balance Body teacher training, I'm letting you know right now that training is going to focus on Balance Body equipment, that it's going to focus on things that equipment does that isn't necessarily stuff that you can do on other brands of apparatus. Okay. If you do a STOT certification, know that certification is going to be geared towards the STOT apparatus, which is lighter springs, which is a lot bigger in some ways, smaller in other ways. I don't love it. I've taught on it a lot for many years. But, just know again that the training was created by a company that also builds equipment, right? So what they want is their trainees to go off, open their own studios and buy that brand of equipment. Even within the classical Pilates world, you have some kind of crossover companies. Peak Pilates is one of those. They have their own teacher training. They make a wide range of apparatus, again, from a little more classical to more contemporary. I'm not a huge fan of Peak right now, only because they have the spring heaviness and tension of the Gratz or Pilates designs or the more classical manufacturers, but they still have ball bearings in the wheels. And that makes everything way too heavy. This is the problem. If you're going to go old school for heavy springs on your reformer, then you need no ball bearings in the wheels so that you have a little drag, which helps counter the force of that spring. So really why I'm doing this episode is because I want everyone to understand that unfortunately, Pilates doesn't equal Pilates in today's world. So if you're out there, just know that there is a beautiful plethora, rainbow of Pilates styles and Pilates equipment out there, but that people can say whatever they want. So there are people out there who are going to say that they're teaching on classical equipment who aren't. That there are people out there who are going to say that their stuff is better and that their apparatus will solve the world's problems. And while they may be selling good equipment and Pilates is great work, they're not solving the world's problems, or we wouldn't still be having them. Right? So just know that there are actual pieces of Pilates equipment. There are a lot of them. I listed them out, right? We got the Reformer, we got the Cadillac, then we have the tower coming off of the Cadillac. Then we have the barrels. There's 3 barrels. We have chairs. There's 3 chairs. And then you have the pedipole. A lot of studios, you'll also see Swedish bars, the gymnastics bars, because you can do pull-ups and all kinds of things on those that are solidly Pilates. You've got your magic circle. You might have a breathalyzer. You might have a foot corrector. You might have a toe corrector. Joe Pilates did make a lot of little things, but he definitely did not make balls. He definitely did not make bands and tubing. He definitely did not make a foam roller, and none of those things should be called Pilates. I am going to be a little bit of a stickler just for the fact that a Pilates exercise can be done on, I can do a Pilates exercise sitting in my office chair, frankly, but that doesn't make my office chair a piece of Pilates equipment. See what I mean? Like, I can do a Pilates exercise lying in my bed. That doesn't make my bed a piece of Pilates equipment. So on that, I'm going to be a stickler. I encourage you to do the research. I encourage you to get out there, try different studios, try different brands of equipment, ask questions. What brand of equipment are you using? Can you show me what this looks like? What's the difference between this and the classical thing? And I promise you, people will tell you, they will answer your questions, but you as the consumer, either going in for your own body or going in because you want to teach the work, you need to do the research on your own and figure out where it is that you feel the best, which equipment you love to use for your own body and why. And then if you want to go teach, what I recommend people do is take the program that is the program you feel best in as a client, because that will be the one you want to teach. And if you end up opening a studio, I also recommend opening your studio with the brand of equipment or apparatus that you trained on, so that you know it well and you know it inside and out, so that you're not having issues with your students. And if you're a teacher currently renting in different studios, doing different things, and something happens to you, like happened to this woman I talked to in the Facebook group, who was like, what's up with this box situation on this brand of equipment? Then I really recommend that if you're renting and doing that you find the studios, once again, that have the different brands of equipment. Get in there, take some classes, or at least see if you can go in and spend 15 minutes just looking at it, getting on it for a moment, seeing what the springs and the straps feel like. All right, that's all I got for you today. Thank you so, so much, as always, for listening to the podcast. You know I love you guys. And if you love this podcast, please go to Spotify, go to Podpage, go to Apple Podcasts, and leave a rating, and if you can, a written review. And I will talk to you guys next week. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Music brought to you by Nerd Salad. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, especially if you liked it. And please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks.